Welcome to the Ultimate Landscape CEO. Our guest, is Ted Carter from Pinehurst Landscape Company. It's a 60-year-old company. Now, he's not 60. You'll learn more about that. Located in Glen Arm, Maryland. Some commercial, mostly residential, 100% owned by Ted, around $6 million in revenue. This is a great conversation with Ted. 8 different areas that we dive into. Besides his background and his company history, we talk about some of his early challenges and adaptations that he had to take on when he took over the business. And then we dive into some changes he made to help with growth and profitability. We then dive into how he really developed his leadership and his leadership vision and overcoming his own fear and defensiveness and really trying to create a professional environment and figuring out what to delegate, what not to delegate. We then dive into his acquisition success and how he's been able to expand his business using acquisition, and then some future plans he has for diversification using acquisition. You hear in this podcast that it's really an employee-centric business. He has a real employee-centric approach, which has done him well from the very beginning. And lastly, we talk at times about his personal and professional integration, right? How the two are inseparable, and the entrepreneur really has to take care of themselves and believe in themselves and support themselves as well as the business. So we cover all that and more. Here you go. Here's Ted Carter. Ted Carter, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So tell the audience who you are, your company, where you're located, yada, yada.
So I'm the president of Pinehurst Landscape Company. We're based in Glen Arm, Maryland, which is in Baltimore County, just north of Baltimore. We are a design, build, and maintenance company, focusing predominantly on residential work. We've got peak season around 40 employees, I believe, this year. And we've been growing steadily. We've been members of the peer group, the Jeffrey Scott peer group, since I want to say 2018. Could be off by a year. And hoping last year we did around a little over 5 million, hoping to break 6 this year. We're on track so far.
So Ted, you and I we go way back, really.
Yeah.
We met, you were reminding me a little while ago, we met when I held an event up in Pennsylvania. I didn't even know how you found out about it. What was that?
I think actually the first time I heard you talk, I think you were giving a talk in Lexington, Kentucky at an NALP event.
Okay.
And I think I was just, I think you made mention of the fact that you were going to have a talk on the East Coast. So I figured, hey, well, then better chance to grab you because I think you had a room full of 80 people beforehand.
Yeah.
You were up in kind of rural PA talking, I think literally out of someone's barn.
Well, it was someone's shop.
Yeah, shop. Right.
It was like 7 a.m. So you had to travel pretty far to get there.
Yeah. But I don't think I engaged you in coaching first. I think maybe for a year or two after that, I was sort of on the fence for a little while. And then, so we coached for a year, and then I joined a peer group, I think in 2018.
So I remember I think I was giving a talk in DC and you met me for coffee.
In Arlington. Yeah. I think
that's when we first sort of that's the time I remember meeting you.
Mm-hmm.
But that was 15 years ago, right? Or close to it.
Close to it. Yeah.
13. And so tell us about the business and how you got involved, because your dad started this.
Right. So Pinehurst was founded by my dad in 1964. So we're celebrating 60 years this year. So my dad started off cutting grass in high school, like many a landscape company. And the story goes, my father kept the business going while he was going through college, sort of working on weekends, and then sort of basically doing, I think he had 128 clients. So he was cutting a lot of grass. And when he got out of college, he was getting ready to marry my mom and move from a small house out to what was rural Baltimore County at the time. And basically told all of his clients, I'm no longer doing lawn mowing. I'm going more into landscaping and focusing on planting. And bought a 55-acre farm in Glen Arm, and grew the business from there. So I I started off digging holes in high school, like on weekends and during the summertime, but didn't formally come back to Pinehurst until 2009. And my dad at that point was sort of saying, look, I'm getting tired of this. Either we'd kind of dance around the issue of me coming back at some point. And my dad called me up that summer, sort of said, look, either you get serious about this or I'm just going to close up shop. So,
and how big was it then? What was the revenue?
I want to say in like 2008, we were like 2.1. And then in 2009, when things were really starting to fall, I think we crashed down to like 1.6.
Yeah. So you joined in after that crash?
Yeah. Yeah. So I cut my teeth sort of at the bottom of the market, literally playing games of like, hey, do we have enough cash to cover payroll this week? And like, whose house do we need to go visit to go, like, do we owe them that one tree? Okay, let's go plant that tree because we need to collect. So yeah, definitely some scrappy sort of behavior in those early lean years, at least for my career.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's a good lesson to learn early on. Those that started their business in 2009 only knew up, 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 and not the up and down.
Yeah.
So you were telling me how you were impressed that your dad did not lay off his team and just put his own money back into the business.
Yeah, my dad. So Pinehurst is blessed to have a deep legacy of employees. His two longest employees were literally roommates in college. One guy came in, Wink, who basically said he was looking to work as a foreman for a while. He said, "Hey, I've got my college roommate who's looking for a summer job. Can he get a job until he finds something more serious?" Well, that was Corey, and Corey just retired after 40 some years. And those two guys are part of the backbone of Pinehurst, and a great deal of their success is having people who committed to Pinehurst for a long period of time. But to have employees work that long at one company, it takes a lot of dedication on our end. There were times, especially when I was young and seeing sort of like the storm clouds around us and not seeing, that we were kind of breaking even year after year for a couple of years in this sort of 2010 to 2014, which really meant you're kind of losing money because you're not replacing equipment. You're just kind of getting by. There's a lot of times where I was second guessing my dad of like, hey, do we need to cut overhead? Do we need to like try to figure out another way of generating revenue, trying to think outside the box? And my dad sort of understood that, look, we can cut a little bit here and cut a little bit there, but if you start cutting the core members of your team, you're sacrificing long-term gain and sort of the culture of the people for just the short-term win. And now that we're in better times and Pinehurst has grown to where we are, he was absolutely right to that regard.
So you're telling me that he invested a couple $100,000 of his own money just to keep those guys on payroll?
Yeah. My dad put about $200,000 into Pinehurst just to kind of keep the cash flow going. To keep the thing afloat, and it was lean. Yeah. I mean, there are times where we had Bank of America famously call our line and a bunch of other construction lines around the country, I think in the fall of 2010. And we got a call basically saying one day, hey, you owe us, like we're calling a $170,000 note. We'd like you to pay next week.
Yeah.
And that caught us off guard. So there's times where my dad was feeding cash back into the company, and I was nervous for him as well as myself, sort of understanding like what's the actual health of this company, and things were every year slowly improving, but not to the level I could sort of see a real future in those early years of sort of where's Pinehurst going. My dad would tell me about sort of how great the industry was and how fun it could be. And for a number of years, I was kind of feeling like, hey, man, it's lean and not really fun. And where are we headed? Which is a lot of kind of where I was looking. I think that's where a lot of the appeal was to speak to you, is sort of trying to understanding where or how to create a new vision for the company. And it took a long time to kind of really understand how to drive Pinehurst to sort of a new way forward.
So what year did you buy the business?
I believe 2017.
17. So you bought in 17. Mm-hmm. We started coaching, and then we took a break, and then you joined a peer group. Now all coaching clients go into a peer group automatically, or almost automatically.
Yep.
But so you bought it in 2017, and then in 2018 you had that issue losing your H-2B. Tell us about that.
Yeah, 2018. We rely on about half of our workforce being H-2B, and when we didn't get the H-2B guys, we still had a good bit of work going into the springtime, and so we said, all right, well, we're going to go on a hiring spree, and we're going to blow it out of the water. I'm going to be a recruiting monster and get as many people in the door as we can. And we kind of restaffed for the season, but what happened was the quality of the people in terms of their work ethic was varying, to say the least, and their varying levels of performance also varied dramatically. We were starting to do a huge amount of overtime to try to kind of make up for production rates that we thought were standard, and these guys were going well below sort of our normal production rates. So we had to make up for that with extra time on jobs. We're running over on hours on a lot of jobs. And by the middle of summertime, our revenue was lower than we had budgeted. Our payroll was dramatically higher, which meant, our net profit, we were still well into the red. At the halfway point. And we were sort of thinking like, look, there's something dramatically wrong. And all that time, what I was kind of blind to at the moment was our core members of our team, the guys who have been around for years and years, were getting really frustrated with these new guys who weren't carrying, not only were they not carrying their own weight, but they also had, let's say, bad attitudes. They may not be showing up all the time. They definitely weren't team players. And so I was negatively affecting the morale of the bedrock of our company. And so in the midway point in July, we kind of made the call of like, guys, we're either we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to sink this ship. And we basically had a large call of the people who, who didn't have the right values. We made a point to say, look, hey, there's a couple guys here. They're young, they're learning, but they're bought into what we're trying to do. There's a lot of these guys, though, that are they do not have the right value set in terms of honesty, commitment to the team. These guys need to go. Yeah. And we shrank almost by half on our production staff. But then all of a sudden, everybody who was showing up that Monday morning had smiles on their faces because they knew they were working with guys they actually wanted to work with. And we made some other big, I cut my pay. We had a lot of commitments from people of like, look, we're going to have to double down on our sales and making up for a lot of the loss. And we were able to dig out and make it not a great year, but we were able to sort of salvage the year and get a little bit of the black by the end. But for me, it was a huge learning experience to understand that if you don't have the right values in company alignment are the key elements for any job. And if you sacrifice your values, everything's going to start to fall apart.
Did you go in and like raise prices and say, we're just going to do whatever it takes?
A little bit prices, but it was more, we used to budget for what we thought the job should take in terms of hours, not in terms of the reality of, like, say, the challenges of the job. Or, hey, it might take 3 days, it might take 4. We really want this job, so I'm going to bid at 3 and hopefully we make it. One of the things I said to the sales team was, like, I'll be damned if we go over on another job for the rest of the year. Like, I don't care if it's a $100,000 job. If it costs us $100,000 to do it, we're not making money, and we're not in here for charity, guys. So if you lose the job because we overbid it, that's fine. If we win a job that's a dog, that's the problem. And everybody took that to heart. And it was a big lift, and there was a lot of grinding to kind of get the jobs we wanted to, but we did it. And that's kind of been the ethos ever since then, is that we don't bid jobs with, thinking it's perfect situation every time. We make sure that the best way to phrase it to the sales staff is, it is our duty to make sure that we give our teams appropriate amount of time to be successful. And we don't bid worrying about what the other guy is going to bid it. We bid it based upon what we think the realities are going to be. And, the rest of it can be what it is. If somebody else wants to lose money on the job, that's their problem.
It seems like that was a real turning point for you, where you shed this fear that people in our industry seem to carry with them to make the right call.
Yeah. Well, it became very obvious when it's either like I start worrying about the actual performance of the company and the profitability, and a lot less about what the other guy's bidding. Because going about it the first way, bidding by fear, is driving our company to the ground.
Yeah.
And it's proven. I mean, part of it, you can be, Maryland is an affluent area, no doubt. But we started going back to the core of customer service and preaching value. And all of a sudden we realized, look, we're delivering a great product. We have incredibly talented employees. Look, there's a reason why people want to work with us. We need to remember why that is, and then basically justify the price on, we're supporting these incredibly talented employees, and we deserve this price.
So you bought your second generation.
Yep.
And sometimes second generation can't live up to the legacy. They can't outpace the first generation. And you clearly have done that, but I think it was a journey for you. Meaning, when you first showed up in the peer group meeting, I remember the guys giving you a hard time on your margins and probably other things as well. And, we're just being honest here, right? So, and I think you're like a little bit defensive and
a little bit. Dude, I still to this day apologize to some of the guys in the peer group for definitely the first 2 meetings. I had a lot of fear and anxiety of trying to understand. I look at like some incredibly successful guys in my peer group. Yeah. And I was just like, I can't do what I'm doing. Like, how are you pulling this off? And I think part of the challenge I had was I was trying to think about the team I currently had, and the legacy employees I had came with a lot of strong work ethic, but some of them weren't really open-minded to trying new things or going about it in new ways.
Yeah.
And I was hung up on, how do I achieve the goals I have with the employees I currently have, as opposed to the mindset of, what are the employees I need to achieve these goals?
And yeah, okay. So since you said it, yes, you were very defensive.
Oh yeah.
and you even came across a kind of a bit smug in your. That's just how it presented itself.
Sure.
And we, the group, really beat you up, and kudos to you to like stand up, take it, come back for more, and it took
Humble
a couple
pie,
meetings. What's that?
Humble pie. A lot of humble pie.
Yeah. It. You said 2 meetings. Maybe it was 2 or 3. It seemed like it was a while. And then something happened. What was that? What changed?
I'd say 2 things. I started developing a team of new employees that were coming on that were really buying into the vision I had. And I knew, I think they gave me the confidence to sort of say, hey, I think we can really push the envelope in things like growing or recurring revenue of, let's say, garden services. Or, hey, I really, I think we used to not do masonry work at house. And I started to say, hey, I really think our guys can really step up and do more elaborate projects, do more complex work, larger projects that demand, higher revenue. And incrementally, it wasn't sort of overnight. We said like, boom, we're going to become the greatest design build firm in Baltimore. But we kind of said, hey, I think we could take on this one, and then I think we could do a little more. We could take on more, and so that ultimately, I think the trust and sort of excitement of building this team that encouraged me to say, hey, I think we can get more ambitious.
Yeah.
And I think it was more of, I think a lot of it had to do with my own maturity and growing into a role as a leader of saying, hey, my responsibility is to create a vision for this company and where I think we can go and why I think it's going to be a win for everybody. And hearing the guys, and initially being kind of afraid to say that to the team, but and sort of trying to give like a big vision and sort of something bold as opposed to kind of what we've been doing literally for 50 years. That's kind of, it's scary to kind of change the course with the ship that's always been going this direction. But once I started offering new ideas and sort of a new vision of where Pinehurst could go, rather than getting a lot of pushback, I got a lot of people are so saying, hey, that sounds great. I'm on board. Let's go. And also when I heard that kind of like excitement and encouragement, I was like, all right, nice. We'd sort of hit one goal and just say, hey, we did that. We actually did that faster than I thought we could. What about, this? And then all of a sudden we started to really like, wow, every time we set ourselves a goal, we're able to achieve more and more. Guys, let's keep going. Let's see how far we can take this. Confidence as being a leader, I think, was a big part of it.
Yeah, you were, we gave you a lot of flack on your margins and pricing. And I remember you being defensive, like, I can't, fill in the blank. I can't, whatever it was. And now I would say you're one of the leaders of the group. I mean, there's a lot of leaders in the group, but you're definitely have come full circle where you're the person who might be mentoring somebody else, a new member in the group, and you're having consistent margins and doing really well. And I think you've just built a new facility. Is that right?
Yeah, we've got a new office that I'm sitting in now where we had sort of 2 buildings adjacent to one another. We tore down one and sort of built off of the other. So we've been able to, I wanted to create an office and an environment that reflected the professionalism of the employees that we have here.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to, we dropped a lot of money on this thing, but I wanted it to be something that everybody here was going to be proud of and reflected the quality of the work. When we have clients come in, I want them to be impressed by the office space, and we're building out a new conference room that's also going to be sort of a materials library, so we can invite clients and sort of say, hey, let's go look at all the materials that we're going to be using here and really wow them, make something special.
I remember that first visit to your facility. I think you had 8-track tapes in the background. You had dust that must have been 20 years old in that.
So we had like, oh God. So we had an original blueprint machine that like you literally put the vellum in and like it printed out the thing and it reeked of ammonia.
Yeah.
Like we had like indoor outdoor carpeting like inside and like we would just, I think there were squirrels that were in the attic. I mean, you had to walk outside to go to the bathroom, like literally to another room. So, or like another building. So there was a lot to be desired.
I think somebody probably died in there, and they're probably still back in there somewhere. So that building you knocked down?
We knocked down the building, so they're buried at this point.
Yeah. So you've really, like I started off by saying some second generation guys or people don't live up to the legacy, don't surpass, don't take it to the next level, and you definitely have. And I think you're really starting to make some moves. You were emailing me about some of the acquisitions you were looking at and the fear you had going into that. You want to share a bit about that?
Yeah. So 18 months ago, we settled on our first acquisition. That wasn't me buying my father out, was actually buying another company. I had been in talks with this individual for probably 2 years prior. And I had been interested in them partly because they own the Christmas decor franchise in our area. A number of the members in our peer group own Christmas decor franchises in their areas as well. And it appealed to me as a better alternative than pushing snow. We haven't really done snow and ice removal for a long time. But I wanted to look for something to kind of stretch out the season. And they had a number of talented employees that I thought would be great to bring them into the Pinehurst family as well. We'd been talking acquisition in the peer group itself. I'd seen a number of people show a great deal of success doing it. And on my own, I definitely would not have been quite as bold, but I'd sort of seen these other guys doing they can do it. This looks easy. Give it a try. Definitely learned a couple things along the way in terms of attorneys and accountants making things a little bit more difficult than just a handshake. But we completed our first full year last year, and it was a great success. The vast majority, all but one employee from Mullen Nursery came over to work at Pinehurst. The Christmas decor season was a great success, and we're looking to actually build upon it even more this coming year. But it's been huge. We've actually, one of the great things about it is we've actually already promoted within two of their employees to a sales position and a production coordinator position, and they've got a great deal of talent that's come into us. So it's been wonderful. I'm actually excited to see some of them grow into new leadership roles in the future. And I tell you, Christmas lighting has been excellent. We found out actually it's a great recruiting tool. When everybody's laying off their employees in November because they're done mowing, and we're in the heights of Christmas. So we brought on 4 seasonal employees, and 2 of them are still with us. And, they're already asking, can our friends come and work in the spring? So it's been a great tool and something we're really excited to keep building into this year.
So what's the next acquisition?
I've already talking to a friend of mine in the area who similar. We work in the same geographic region, same high level or high residential clientele. Don't want to get too much more into it at the moment.
Yeah, don't tell me. That was a rhetorical question.
It may include a new service as well. That would be a good complement to what we're already doing.
God, I hope it's swimming pools. Don't tell me, but
actually, I'm looking into that too. I'm talking to a buddy of mine in the peer group. I want to go visit him this spring and watch him install some.
I think every landscape contractor that does install should sell swimming pools. I don't care if you build them or not. Separate discussion, but by selling them, you automatically get a new stream of leads that you otherwise wouldn't get. So
absolutely. If you think about, I think about this a lot in terms of from a buyer's or like a homeowner's perspective, what engages a significant project? And it's either going to be, it's probably three things. It's either you're building a new home, where you're engaging an architect, and then sort of the architect's going to tell like, all right, well, I recommend you speak to this interior designer, and I recommend you speak to this builder. And sometimes they're saying, and I recommend you speak to this landscape architect or landscape designer.
Yeah.
And so architect's a big decision maker that you want to market to. The second major construction project is like a significant home renovation. So you might be building out a wing or something to that regard, that or doing like just a large home gut. And usually when you're doing that, you're going to be engaging possibly an architect, but certainly a home builder or home renovator. And a lot of times that's when they're like, hey, while we're doing this, I know we're making that sunroom. I really want to make that patio that goes out of that sunroom, or that 3-season, 4-season room. And that's where we're trying to engage a lot of renovators as well. But then you also get like the other third big move is the pool. Like, that's when like the guy's been dreaming about it for years. He envisions his kids playing in the pool all summer long. And that pool, when you say I want to build the pool, few people are going to do just the pool. They envision the pool as the trigger for all the different elements that are going to go in their backyard.
Little do they know.
Yeah.
Or maybe they do know.
Right. So yeah, it's, we've talked to, we design pools, and I've taken a couple classes in the pool construction process, trying to figure out, we've got some really talented people when it comes to equipment operations. Does it make sense to try to get into pools ourselves? The concrete pool, I'm realizing after studying it more, like so much of it is subcontracted out no matter what. I don't really want to get into the business where I'm building 40 pools a year. The biggest issue I have with pool construction is that you're beholden to someone else's schedule. And a lot of the pool contractors I've spoken to, I've been frustrated with their follow through on when they're going to deliver. And
but that's the opportunity, Ted, for you.
I know. I trust me. I weigh this in, and if you were to ask my design team, I'm sure they would roll their eyes, because it'd be one more time that Ted's talking about this. The problem is that I don't know if I could. I don't ever want to use a client as a guinea pig for that stuff. So we've got a pool builder that we're working with that can deliver a good product, and we haven't had those issues.
Yeah, I want to go back to one thing you said about the subs. So there was a quasi-competitor, a peer in the pool industry back when I was, in Connecticut in our pool company. Mm-hmm. And they used subs too to do the gunite back then. I think it's more likely shotcrete these days. And then the plasterer. And he would prepay for X number of pools. Just give the guy the money so that he could have the slots when he wanted them. And that's how he overcame that whole issue.
Yeah. The guy actually picks up the phone when you call him.
Yeah. A lot of trust goes in that. In any event, this is definitely a topic worth diving into. I'm
also looking into possibly kind of going the route of fiberglass pools. Especially a lot of people we've spoken to I think a big trend in the future is going to be the plunge pool. The
trend is now.
Yeah. And I think vinyl pools fiberglass pools can really serve that purpose, and it's something that we can do in-house pretty quickly.
A lot of concrete. There's more and more companies that will drop ship concrete plunge pools, and now with the trend of what do you call it? Ice plunging? I don't know, whatever you call that.
Cold water right. The Joe Rogan vibe.
So there's wealthy clients now that'll they'll have the hot plunge pool or the sauna pool and then the cold plunge pool. So, or a natural shotcrete gunite pool and a plunge pool.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of opportunity there. You've been telling me how you're trying to really work yourself out of a job now that you've got a grasp of, well, building the management team. You have a great second in command. I'm a big believer in that, and you really have embraced that and implemented that. And so now you're working yourself out of a job. What's the next job what is your job at your company?
So as president of Pinehurst, I'm responsible for creating a vision of where we're going to be going. And I like to think of myself as a coach and a cheerleader for the employees. And to that degree, it's sort of my responsibility is the really big and then the really small. Obviously, sort of talking vision with my peer group and with Dan, our GM, and Cheryl, our office manager. We're looking on sort of a monthly and quarterly basis of how the ship's going, and I'm trying to use my binoculars to look further ahead of where we can keep taking things and try to develop those opportunities for acquisitions and things like that. And I'm trying to make sure I also kind of have the time to check in with employees and sort of say, hey, how's everything going? How's your kid doing? And something that is really important to me is knowing that people aren't just doing well from a performance standpoint of their sales or the number of hours they've been producing, but I generally want to make sure that people feel like they're respected and felt welcome at Pinehurst and belong. So I do like to take the time to check in and make sure people are really doing well personally. Somebody's got an issue at home that they got to deal with. I want to tell them, you always get on an airplane and they'll tell you before assisting others, you got to put your oxygen mask on first. And I use that analogy all the time. If I see somebody who's burned out because their kid's home sick or they're having a personal issue they're dealing with, I'll dive and say, hey, look, go take care of that issue and come back with more energy tomorrow. I'd rather you take care of yourself, and then I know you'll be better for it, and you'll be selfishly you'll be a better employee. But I also long term want to make sure that you're growing and taking care of what you need to personally.
So you guys really walk the talk of employee first company.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
people first.
I benefit from being my dad. One of the things that I really appreciate is that my dad said, like, hey, if you want to come work at Pinehurst, great. There'll be a place for you, but you need to go out and go do other things. And I've been other people's employees. I've worked at some fairly large companies and corporations, and I know what it feels like to be a cog in the wheel, and I hate it. I absolutely hate it. And I don't want anybody at Pinehurst to feel like they're just a cog in the wheel. I think Pinehurst has failed at one of its values if someone is starting to feel that way. And so I think one thing that we do well is we promote a family first culture. We do have a lot of events where we try to do team building and make sure people feel like their efforts are recognized and that they're having fun and that we celebrate successes and wins. And all that's really important. I mean, all of that's the really fun stuff that actually gets me out of bed now. I'm starting to see guys, foremen, buy their first house, or they're getting married and having kids. And they were a laborer, now they're a foreman, or they're a foreman and now they're going to be a supervisor. I'm really proud of seeing growth in the companies. We're right now going in the process of reviewing company values, and one of the things that is uncompromising for me that I've learned is growth, and it's both growth for the company so that we can create new opportunities for employees, but then also personal growth for individuals. And that can be education, that can be achieving personal goals, but all that's, if you're not growing, your stagnation is a terrible thing, and it can undermine a company, and it can really affect somebody personally. And it's usually I found people who are unhappy that are coming in pissed off at the world. There's something about that they're feeling stagnant or overlooked, or just that they're not achieving what they're doing personally, and that's critical. So that's why I tell people, look, if you got like an educational opportunity, come to me. I'll be more than happy to pay for it, because that kind of thing. I not only want them to feel supported in something that's going to help them grow in the industry, but I want that labor to become my next foreman or site supervisor or salesperson. Yep. I mean, that's all that's critical.
Wow, that's great. That's good. I love doing these podcasts because I get to know even people that I know well, like you, even better.
Yeah,
it's great to hear these insights. What's the next job you're going to give up? Have you given up all the jobs you can? Worked your way out of all the jobs you
can? So Dan, our general manager, is doing a great job of being the general that's marshaling the troops. I am in the process of working with both Dan and Cheryl, our office manager, on training them on the finances, the rolling budget that we work with, and just a lot of the KPIs of understanding the balance sheet and our strategies of like what's the difference between production strategies and sales strategies. Brian, who's one of our designers and actually a friend of mine from grad school, we've given him the job as sales manager of the team. So I'm working with him just this beginning of this year to start growing into the role of sales manager. The only thing I haven't really kind of figured out yet is marketing. That's something. I'm still the guy who sort of, on the Instagram account, plugging beautiful photos and going to job sites and snapping something for the stories. But I've also, we've had chats about this. I've tried other people and they just don't sound like us. The kind of the third party marketing people, just in my eyes, just sound really generic. It doesn't have our voice, and I think what one of the things I'm trying to figure out is if I could identify an employee at Pinehurst who maybe one of the young ones that might be interested in taking over social media and sort of plugging that sort of thing, because I think that's important. Clients love to see the sausage making process, possible or new employees.
That's going to be more than one. That's going to be probably more than one employee as you go down that road. It's just like HR, where there's really different peoples and facets. You with marketing, you could bring in your own videographer in-house. Now, is that the same person doing your social media? Maybe, maybe not. So it's a fun and slippery slope.
It is. I had a great aha from our last peer group meeting when it was a beautiful thing that Sean Baxter shared with us, where he talked about a pastor giving a sermon about a man who was selling his company, and a broker came around and said, "Give me 4 days and I'll sell your business." And 4 days later, he found a buyer. The guy got a check. His business was gone. And he thought of 30 years of his life sort of had gone away in 4 days. And that all that's left is sort of the relationships that he had over the past 30 years is sort of what remained. And I took that a lot to heart, that no matter, I sort of joke with everybody in my peer group and in the company, like, I'm the worst employee at Pinehurst. Everything, I'm so inconsistent. I see something shiny and I go do that, then I stop and go over the next shiny thing. So my consistency is my Achilles heel. And so if I can hire myself into obscurity, the company works better. But the one thing I can't sub out or hire out is sort of is being the values cheerleader And the one thing I don't want to give up is sort of the relationships I have with the employees. I could still see, 20 years from now, still having fun, just checking in with everybody who's in the company and celebrating how they've grown. And I mean, literally, so my dad retired, quote unquote. He was in the office today chatting with Cheryl, and he still shows up every once in a while, usually driving Cheryl nuts. But, he enjoys seeing people, and I totally get it, because what's really rewarding is seeing people grow and develop and have their own success and victories. So, that's something that's going to be important for me in the long term.
So are you and your dad similar?
I think this is common. The older you get, the more you realize you're your parents. I would say, I'd say I'm more similar to my dad than perhaps I realized 10 years ago.
Is your wife an architect or engineer?
She's a landscape architect. Yep.
So have you made I was going to call it the fatal mistake, but have you, does she work for you?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So oddly enough, she sort of works for a nomadic studio called Fido Studio. And they're a niche landscape architecture firm that focuses on, I guess you could call it sort of new American perennial design. And so they get into some very large projects around the country and a couple in Europe. But they're a nomadic studio. They don't really have a one location. So she and one of the principals live in Maryland, and they are currently taking up residence in one of the offices here at Pinehurst. So we talk about our passions about landscaping, and we've worked on a project or two together, but never always sort of just contractor and designer. We are not working in cahoots as far as trying for her to join Pinehurst. I think she enjoys doing her own thing, and she excels at it too.
So I just want to wrap up talking about one of your hobbies. Yeah. I know you love sailing. I think did you grow up in Maine or something, or you at least travel there a lot?
In the summertime, we'd go up there to Maine. We're fortunate enough that my dad was able to sort of, let us go spend the summertime up there, and he would be sort of the weekend warrior who'd come up, spend a couple weeks and go back down. And so I spent a lot of time in Maine in the summertime, and that's where I learned to sail.
Yeah.
My dad, one of the things I admire more and more about my dad, he was fond of saying in August he would disappear, and he would tell Wink and Corey, I don't care if you make money, I don't care if you lose money, just don't get me sued while I'm away. And that was kind of his philosophy. So I'm trying to follow his footsteps and spend a lot of time with my kids up in New England when I can. So yeah, love to get out on the water. That's my kind of, any body of water is sort of where I find my most peace.
Well, you've done great. You've really come, not full circle, although you are coming full circle, aren't you? But you've really,
yep.
you've your dad took the business up to a level, and you have proven the mettle of becoming your own entrepreneur, your own man, and taking this business. And you're a relatively young guy. The sky's the limit for Pinehurst. It's exciting times.
Yeah. No, and we've got such a great team and a young team that I think we've got a lot of big moves still in store for us in the coming years. So
it's exciting.
Yeah. There's still plenty of work to do.
Any final thoughts you want to leave the listener with?
Oh man. I didn't get here on my own, both in terms of the shoulders of the giants that I stand on with my father and Wink and Corey and Fred and Donnie are two of our senior most foremen. Fred literally has been working at Pinehurst longer than I've been alive. I'll let you think about that one. But also just So much of my success is due to the talented employees that are with us now, and I'm incredibly grateful for the people I work with on a daily basis. And the greatest thing is that it's just the power of the team. That working with them has just been so exciting, and it's humbling. I've come to it empowered, and I feel ambitious of what I can do, but only because of the people I work with. So I'm very grateful for that.
I meet people all the time, contractors, entrepreneurs, where they've heard about, one of our groups, but they just can't fathom what it is. It's hard to, you can explain it. I could tell you every little piece about it, but it's hard to explain, I think.
Yeah. This was actually something we talked about in our last meeting in our peer group, is that it's not just we go and talk about a financial benchmark. It's not just talking about, hey, what's your sales strategy? So much of it is, and what really was a big part for me is, and I got this very early on, was how important it is to talk about the individual and how they're doing. Because as an entrepreneur, you're not separated from your business. You are the business, and how you're doing as a person, physically, emotionally, mentally, all ties in with how your business is doing. And that was the first thing that kind of caught me off guard. Not only was the hard talk from everybody, but after all the hard talk, people were genuinely interested about how you're doing as a person, and how candid everybody and open everybody was about their personal lives and what was going well or not going well. And that carries on to this day, that we get into some pretty personal discussions, but it's all part of, who you are. That's why I take it back to Pinehurst, that I really care about how my employees are doing personally, because you take yourself home with you, and you can't win at work and lose at home. You can do it for a little while, but at some point something's going to fall through. So you got to be the whole individual.
Well said, Ted. I think we're going to leave it there. Great words. Thank you
Thanks
for coming on and just being open and honest and transparent. I appreciate that.
Yeah, been a pleasure. Appreciate having the chance to be part of the journey with you and your team.
Thanks.